Hey, all right, what are you doing over there? Looks like you're trying to clean the inner fender panel.
No, I'm just pulling some parts out.
Well, why are you doing that?
Well, you know, we decided that this car might not be worth saving, so I'm pulling the brake booster and a couple of little things that I might be able to use on my 16 valve project.
Do you think it's really worth it?
Well, you know, that's to each his own. You kind of have to choose and decide what's actually worth it. You know, I decided this car, with the transmission problems and the interior problems and the overwhelming, just really poorly done bodywork, it's not worth trying to save this car. It's too far gone at this point. But there's a lot of nice parts that I'm going to be able to pull off of here and use, you know, I should be able to use on my project. So things like the brake booster, the front windshield I'm going to pull out, the rear windshield is good. I'm taking the rear axles, the brakes. There's a lot of parts on these 2.6 models that will cross over to the 16 valve model. So, you know, is it worth it? Well, you've heard us say it. There's nothing more expensive than a cheap Mercedes, but we need to make a little change to that. There is nothing more expensive than a cheap Mercedes unless you're using it for parts, and then there's nothing better than a cheap Mercedes. All right, so what are you doing poking around my engine bay, Kent?
Well, Ari, I'm looking for treasures here. What are you going to do with the rest of the car anyway?
Well, I haven't really decided. I'm going to have most of a car still left over. Any chance you'd be interested in buying it?
Well, it's all about price, right? You know,
Yeah.
I know what you paid for it, so.
I guess I have a little disadvantage there.
You have a disadvantage here. What are you willing to let it go for?
Well, you know, maybe give me a day to think about it, and I'll get back to you.
Okay, good enough.
Okay.
Fair enough. All right. Well,
I'll let you have your alone time now.
Okay. Now I need some alone time with the car to figure out whether I really want or need anything left on this car here. I hope you enjoyed that series on buying this cheap 190E. There was an intent in this video series, and that was to, you know, show you some of the downfalls of buying a cheap Mercedes Benz, particularly if it's not running. I've seen cases where the owner knows there's some really bad things wrong with the car, and he can actually jerry-rig the engine so it won't run. And you're thinking, boy, if I can just get this engine running, then, you know, I'm going to have a great car. But you may not know there's a major problem. It could be either internal in the engine or, like you saw here, a major catastrophic transmission failure. I'm not saying the owner of this car did that, but it is very easy to do something like that. So if you're going to buy a cheap Mercedes, okay, you need to consider a couple things. Okay, what's the worst thing that can happen? The worst thing that can happen is, just like Ari, okay, it's not going to be worth fixing. So then, if the worst thing does happen, can you live with it? And I think in Ari's case, he can live with it, because he's going to take a bunch of these parts and put on his 16 valve. And if you do a little mental math here, just adding up the value of the rear axles, one of the taillight lenses, the rear glass, the front windshield, the booster, he's going to get the heater motor and the mono wiper assembly, all these things that could be used on his car down the road could save him quite a bit of money. But as a parting little comment, I want to share this with you. One of the most successful ways I've had in the past of restoring an older Mercedes is do it with two cars. That's right. You get two cars. I've done this probably a dozen times, where you find a car with a really good body, a really good engine, and you maybe find another car that's got a super interior, and you can take both those cars, you get them for the right price, and you can put one car together, and when you're done, you have a ton of parts to keep that car running for many years to come. So like Ari said, there is nothing more expensive than a cheap Mercedes if you're going to restore it and make it a daily driver. But if not, you might find some real treasures in a cheap old Benz.